BTB listeners, thank you so much for checking out today's episode. Listen, if this episode inspires you, do me a favor, take 5 seconds to shoot me a like and subscribe to the podcast. There are several more exciting guests that are in the pipeline, and I just can't thank you enough for your continued support, and let's keep paying the mission forward.
I would say it's not so much about what level you're at currently, but the way you go about your business. Yeah, as you said, the word intensity really resonates with me, being 5'10", 140 pounds at 18 years old. So I had to be intense to beat a lot of kids. If you move your feet, if you can maintain your focus, if you can show that you're process oriented and being relentless in how you attack that, it's not so much the results are everything. If people see that you work and you have a great attitude and you're respectful, those things go a long, long way, maybe even more so than results.
What are you built to be? What are you built to become? The time is now. The time is right now. You weren't built to break. You were built to be something greater. Welcome to Season 2 of the BTB Project. I'm your host, Kollman Gearhart. I was an overweight kid, one counted out, lost 100 pounds, found purpose in the pain, and turned my setbacks into a story worth telling. This podcast isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about identity, discipline, and comebacks. Getting up one more time and becoming who we're always meant to be. If you're ready to go deep, do the work, and live out what you're built to be, you're in the right place. Let's lock in, let's rise, and let's get to work. Welcome back to the BTB Project. I could not be more excited because today's guest is not just an elite athlete. He's also a leader, a culture builder, and someone that's chosen to stay in the game of tennis long after the cheers have faded for his own individual accolades. He was one of the top recruited juniors in the country, coming from the state of Washington. Spent all of his time in the Pac-12 as a player, earning national rankings, then decided to take his talents into coaching. I cannot wait to get into his story, what he contributes both on and off the tennis court, and just the way that this guy competes is going to be inspiring for you as the listener. Mr. Mitch Stewart, welcome to the BTB Project.
Thank you for having me, Kollman. I'm really, really excited to be here and looking forward to sharing my story for whoever's willing to listen, and hopefully I can reach some people.
It's awesome, man. A little over 2.5 years ago, I said that same thing when I started this podcast. Like, who the heck wants to listen to the coach's voice on the airstreams of social media, right? For you, man, most recently coming off of win at the Denver City Open, where you rode off into the sunset and were able to enjoy Colorado again, and a tournament that I hold dear to my heart. But I just have to ask, being out of the college playing scene now, how do you go out there and still compete at the level you do?
Great question, honestly. A little bit of a mystery to me. As I've gotten older and exited my competitive life, I actually feel like I've grown as a player a lot more in a lot of ways. I think I see the court differently. There's no doubt I'm a half a step, if not a full step slower than I was when I was 21 or 22 and training 20 hours a week. But yeah, I don't know. I'm hitting the ball better. I feel like I make better decisions out there. And yeah, at the end of the day, I find it so fun to be able to play and compete still. So I'm trying to milk out whatever athleticism's left in this old body, and I just find it fun. I don't put a lot of stress on myself. Always at the end of an event, my body feels the stress, I'll tell you. Like serving for an hour and a half in a match, my abs, my back. Oh, geez, I feel it. But yeah, I really, really enjoy it. I like being feisty. I like being competitive, and I feel like it keeps me young. So I have a love for the sport, and I want to keep doing it for as long as my body will let me play at this level.
I could definitely relate to that feeling of getting the game post college because our maturity seems to increase. Well, at least hopefully, right? But when I think of the way you compete and your intensity, it doesn't just stem from this desire to play tennis. I think the word athlete has stuck with you for a long time. And after doing some digging, I just have to ask, man, what's harder for you to run a sub 412 mile or to go out there and grind against some of the best college tennis players in the country?
They're so different in ways. Trust me, that 412 mile is way behind me. I like to think I could pop out there and run sub 5 still. The mile was just what it was. It was 4.5 minutes of hell, just grueling, shearing pain, especially laps 2 and 3. Lap 4, you're mostly blacked out. You have no idea what's happening. And then a tennis match is a lot more like mental warfare, right? I'm trying to find strategies, trying to find ways to not so much get under my opponent's skin, but just make them uncomfortable, right? And the hard thing about tennis is there's not a clock on the sport. So I think we got a great example at the French Open final. We'll watch Alcaraz and Sinner do what they do for 5.5 hours, and that's obviously the tippy top of what our sport has to offer. But nonetheless, however long it takes to find that wiggle room or, finally get to a point where your opponent is breaking down. That's really what I enjoy about tennis. And I think that's where the struggle comes from playing a tennis match. The other big thing about tennis is it's not like you have a team around you to help support and love you. You're coming up with all these thoughts and strategies and execution. There's so much to think about. It's all on your own. I think that challenge is so exciting and so fun, even if in the moment us tennis players look really pissed off when we're doing it. It's just a challenge. And yeah, I think that's what makes the sport so competitive and really builds the game a lot.
Take me back to your ability to fall in love with this game, because as I've gotten to know your story a little bit, I was eager to talk to you because we just have a ton of similarities. I believe you might suffer from little brother syndrome, just like myself. I also have noticed that somehow, some way, some guys that I coach end up being in the same recruiting house as yours when you're at Washington. And then all of a sudden you're an assistant coach at schools like Arizona, where it's with a good friend of mine, Clancy Shields. And ultimately, I want to dive into your coaching backgrounds, but this path that you took from Federal Way, Washington, how in the world did tennis become part of your acumen?
Another great question. There's no tennis background in my family. I think to this day, my mom might not even know how to keep score. So my dad does, he watches enough, but he has no idea how I'm hitting the shots I do or anything like that. I guess I'll just kind of start from the beginning. As you just mentioned, I'm little brother syndrome. My older brother is 4.5 years older than me. So naturally, when I was really young, I wanted to do whatever he was doing. And I think my parents were ready to get us out of the house for a few hours a day when I was about 6 and he was like 10. So we got this like really rinky dinky little pool, and they have like 2 tennis courts with cracks in it this big. And there was a guy in town who's a high school coach, and he would run like a summer camp. And that's probably my earliest memories of playing tennis, was me and my brother walking down the street to these crappy courts and hitting the ball around. We both enjoyed it a lot. So my brother was my practice partner growing up, and as we got more competitive, my parents figured out what the USTA was and how to sign up for tournaments, and that's a whole other story. If I had 2 hours to tell you, I got a bunch of stories for that too. But nonetheless, I really got to give my brother a lot of credit here. As I turned like 10 and he was like 15 years old and we're practicing together, obviously the 10-year-old is going to get a lot more out of that than the 15-year-old. So his tennis suffered because of me, but mine shot up really fast. And he never complained. He was always really happy for me. But just once I got into tournaments, man, it was all downhill from there. Just seeing the different levels. And as I started to learn more about the national tournaments you can play, or, PNW or Washington and Oregon, just kind of found out that more and more people play this sport. The community just kept growing. and I had big goals and aspirations. I was super competitive, and finally I kind of reached the pinnacle when I was playing national level events and started doing well when I was 15 or 16 years old. Was playing with good friends like Tommy Paul and Francis Tiafoe. You even got into the qualies of the Junior US Open in 2012, which was maybe one of my best sporting memories in my entire life. Maybe one of the best memories of my entire life, if I have to say. So, yeah, the sports just continued to give back to me, and I can't be more thankful. How that journey and that passion really started, it's hard to say, but it's stuck and it's still growing to this day.
Your ability to hone your game to play at that level. I'm coming from Intermountain tennis. You're coming from the Pacific Northwest. Well, everything I've learned now as a coach, but more importantly as a player, was I could be one of the top ranked Intermountain kids and then go to the national level, and folks from Texas and California salivate to play someone in the Intermountain section first round. How does Pacific Northwest fall into that segue? And ultimately, how are you to be one of the top guys in the nation coming from that demographic?
Yeah, when I was younger, 12s and 14 and under, and I was kind of first getting a foothold on the national setting and, kind of understanding what tournaments were out there to play against the California kids or the Florida kids, whatever it might be. I got a lot of that treatment. I would play a California kid who plays outdoors every single day against other players, top 20 in the country. They would beat up on me when I was 12 and 14. I really built up my confidence. Growing up, I played baseball, soccer, basketball. I never played football because I'm kind of small and my mom was scared, which was probably a good decision at the end of the day. But I basically played every sport, whatever was in season and whatever my friends were doing. That was the way I played. Tennis was always just like another thing I could do later at night or whatever. So I wasn't super dedicated to my tennis until I got to high school. That was when I really noticed I was probably excelling the most in tennis and I was probably enjoying it the most. And so what I did, genius idea I got was let's go do some long distance running on the track to train for tennis. And, one of those lessons that my dad always taught me was, I don't care what you do, just you better do it at 110% or you're not doing it. He never wanted to see me go out and do something that I was going to do half-ass, basically.
Yeah.
So obviously with that mindset, I go out, and the first ever mile I run when I was 15 years old, it was like a 4:40, and that hurt really bad. That was in the rain, Washington State, you name, that didn't feel good. As I was doing this track stuff and then coming back into tennis, especially once track season ended, I noticed, a few different things. One, I felt a lot stronger. My fitness obviously improved. My legs were more defined. I felt physically more fit out there. But the big one for me that I think back to was the first match back. I'm in like Louisiana in the summertime, 100 degrees. 80% humidity, and I'm like a set in with this kid who's really, really good, maybe top 20 in the country. And we get done with the first set. I think I lost it in 6-4, but it was close. And he's like keeled over and like dying out there, and I felt really good. And so I noticed kind of that this training I was doing unintentionally had built up this level of confidence in me. And so I really dove into this grinder mentality where I was going to be like a David Ferrer kind of style guy out there. And I was like, good luck running me down, especially in the summertime in the heat, wherever we're playing. And that's kind of the first time I would say I really built an identity on court where this is something I can rely on and really make something my own, and that I can believe and trust in, and that I can, like I said, own. That track stuff is what really put me on the national scene and allowed me to believe that I didn't think there was anyone else out there running a 4:12 mile. So going up against California, Florida kids didn't really seem like a thing. We were just tennis players at that point.
The college path for you kept you local, but obviously your ranking and your recruiting process, I'm sure, was pretty extensive. Would love for you to walk the listeners through why Washington and what were some other contenders you had in the option basket.
Yeah, the recruiting process was pretty fun for me. As a multi-sport athlete, I watched college football, college basketball, you name it. So I knew every school in the country by the time I was 15 years old. And when Stanford was calling me, and obviously the Ducks, basically everyone on the West Coast was giving me calls. I would go to school and tell my friends, and they thought that was really cool, which made me feel really cool. So it's kind of fun stories there. But by the time I got down to the nitty gritty, it was down to Washington. I'd say Stanford was at the top of my list. Alabama snuck in at the very end. They gave me a really nice scholarship offer to play in the SEC, which was intriguing. I liked playing in the hot humidity. And then Duke was in there as well. They were pretty keen on me. So I was pretty open to leaving Washington State. Honestly, I didn't know it wasn't that like local was a big deal breaker for me or anything. At the end of the day, though, Matt Anger really showed lots of interest. He was calling me. He was coming to my house for dinner, which was nerve-wracking to say the least, to be on my best behavior. But he's the one who I thought showed that he could really help me and become a better player. And not even just that, but a better man, young man. I was a boy at the time. And so just seeing his dedication to recruiting me, I thought went miles, and which is, I guess, kind of a pun unintended there with the running stuff. Actually, funny story with Matt Anger, if you don't mind. I don't want to take
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
It was my senior year, and they had a road match against the Ducks in Eugene. Well, funny enough, my high school track team was really good. We had a ton of amazing athletes on the team, and same weekend, for whatever reason, just coincidence, we're down at Hayward Field running in Tracktown, USA for a big high school track meet. So the night before the match, I'm running in the distance medley relay where I got the 1,600-meter leg. And, I didn't think he'd pull up. He didn't tell me. He surprised me. So he just pulls up to the race. And, like, I'm getting ready to grab the baton. He's like, let's go, Stu, from the sideline. And look over, and I start shitting my pants, I'm like, now I gotta run really fast. And I think I actually ended up running like a 4:18 in that leg, so I was moving pretty good. And
Wow.
he's trying to talk to me after. I'm like, hey, give me a minute. But yeah, just small things like that. He was just it felt like he was always there for me. And I knew his pedigree as well as a player. That was something that was really enticing to me. And at the end of the day, I made an incredible decision, and I learned so much from him. And being close to home ended up having a lot of benefits too. So I couldn't have enjoyed my experience at UW anymore, and do it all over again if I could.
Your accolades were extraordinary at Washington. We could probably have a podcast series just on that, but I want you to really try to drill down and reflect on your career and think of one moment that you were truly proud of, but also maybe ignited this curiosity to want to continue but be a coach.
Yeah, I have a few, honestly. Pinpointing one would be tough. I vividly will remember this. I'll say it was probably my freshman year, so I'm 18 years old, and I think it was our second ever dual match. We played Portland State in our first one, where a coach had put me at number 2 singles right away. Was pretty comfortable in that one. I was quite nervous, to say the least, but was able to get through that match pretty straightforward. And then the next weekend, he tells me he's going to put me at number 1, and we're playing against East Tennessee State, which was maybe one school that I hadn't heard of at the time. No idea what city was in Tennessee. I knew that. That was about it. And I was feeling kind of a little full of myself at this point, and coach is like, hey, you got a really tough match on Friday, like, be ready to go, like, let's get some good practice in. And I was like, yeah, okay, like, East Tennessee State, like, this is another Portland State, or whatever. And we get to Friday, and we get an hour into the match, and I'm at like 3-all deuce point, and I'm having 60 ball rallies every point with this guy from Spain who's a beast, honestly. And I remember just like looking over to coach, and he's like, I tried to tell you that, like, you got a tough one out here. And I was able to knuckle down, and I got the win. That guy actually beat me later on, but that match right there really ignited a ton of curiosity. Like, there's a lot of good tennis out here around the country. It doesn't matter what school you're at. Like, we're going to find some really good players. And, college tennis really piqued my interest at that point. I was like, I would love to know what else East Tennessee State has to offer, because I was so impressed. At that point, all I had really known was who the USCs and the Stanfords of the world were, and things like that. But I would say that moment was really eye-opening for me, and that really propelled me to lock in day in and day out. And I'd say that lesson right there is improving my coaching life as well, making sure my players are prepared at all times.
Yeah, sometimes great players don't make great coaches, and I have experienced that myself. I've had some coaches that I looked up to as tremendous players, and sometimes I leave those moments scratching my head. Sometimes I'm incredibly grateful for what they've done for me. But ultimately, as we start trickling into your coaching career, I want to actually bridge gap the reality of collegiate tennis in 2025. I mean, we have roster limits. We have programs that are being cut. My program at the University of Northern Colorado was cut during COVID. You see so many shakeups and changes, and coming from Colorado and knowing what you know of the Colorado community and probably Washington as well. I mean, the likelihood to be an American tennis player to play D1 is just, it was tough 20 years ago when I was doing it. It's almost impossible now. If I was an inspiring junior trying to make a Division I roster next year, what advice do you have for me?
Yeah, being in that world, I'll first like lightly touch on some of the changes in NCAA and stuff, and I'd say they're a little daunting. I think I would like to see the passion of the sport be at the forefront of programs. I know money is becoming a big contributor in the college programs now, and it's not that that's good nor it's bad. If it can help fund players to go play on tour, I think that's fantastic. Obviously, that's a great way, and I think college tennis is, the best pathway into the pros now. We see it with all the guys on tour. Ben Shelton is kind of like the poster boy of it, and guys like Jacob Fernley, who I'm a big fan of.
TCU, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, change is change, so we all got a little getting used to it. But if I were to give any advice to aspiring juniors right now, I would say it's not so much about what level you're at currently, but the way you go about your business is really what's striking the eye of a lot of coaches. Yeah, as you said, the word intensity really resonates with me. Being 5'10", 140 pounds at 18 years old, soaking wet, that is. I had to be intense to beat a lot of kids. So if you move your feet really well, if you can maintain your focus for an extended period of time, if you can show that you're process oriented and thinking through your game plan and being relentless in how you attack that, it's not so much that the results are everything when it comes to recruitment. I'd say if people get their eyes on you and they see that you work in a way and you have a great attitude and you're respectful, those things go a long, long way, maybe even more so than results. There's no doubt that results tell a story, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, college coaches need to win matches sometimes in order to keep their job, especially in competitive conferences like the SEC or
100%.
something.
Yeah.
But what college is, it's an academy. Each one of these colleges is like an academy. You have all the training tools you need, practice time, coaches that you work with, practice players, gym, strength coaches, you got mental coaches. Everything is provided for you. So if you have like the base of what a great competitor has, coaches really believe that you'll come in and you can thrive and you can move this way really quickly. And we see it all the time with the right kids. That would be my best advice, is try to do all the little things really, really, really well, and maybe the winning will come if you do those things. So don't focus too hard on the results and play tense, but at the same time, just make sure you bust your butt every single day, practice included, and try to do all the right things. It's definitely easier said than done. You got to be wired a little differently, as I am. I'm a little crazy, so nonetheless, that would be my best advice, right? It's not all about the results, but how you go about your business is what really catches the eye of a lot of coaches.
It makes me think of this quote that I have been holding on to for a while. It's what you do when no one's watching is when you get really good. And it doesn't surprise me that the Washington coach shows up at track meet. I've been fortunate enough to have Dick Gould, former Stanford coach, 17-time national champion, talk about how he recruits players. Greg Patton over at Boise State, how he's recruiting, and Tony Bresky, NCAA champion at Wake Forest, how he's recruiting. And the number one thing that you just reiterated was, does this person go out and fight? Does this person go out and compete? You can't teach it as a coach. It's either something that you have or you don't have. And ultimately, you were able to reap the benefits of that as a player. And then all of a sudden you graduate and you decide to take what I believe was a volunteer assistant coaching role at Arizona in the same conference as you were in. What made you want to go to a potential rival and start your coaching journey?
Yeah, no, that's funny enough, actually. So right before that, I will say I did take an office job. I was a recruiter for like a staffing agency for about 10 months. And I actually, believe it or not, quite enjoyed it. The office environment that we had, at least I was enjoying. If it wasn't for COVID, where they sent us home, and now all of a sudden I'm in a basement alone, making like 50 phone calls a day, cold calls. That's what drove me out of that job. I need to get out of the house. I need to get back on the tennis court. Anything, honestly, anything. That was where my mind was at. So I was kind of shopping around to see what kind of tennis jobs were out there. Obviously, something I know very well. At least I like to think so. And Clancy Shields had always been. He tried to recruit me coming out of school. He was with Boise and then Utah State. weren't super high on my radar at the time with where I was at with my game and my level. I was looking a little bit bigger, I must say. But nonetheless, Clancy would come up to the Northwest. We had these men's opens tournaments in the summer, actually coming up here pretty soon. I got to start hitting the ball around again and get ready for these. I would watch him play when he was like fresh out of school, or maybe sometimes he was in school. And, he was a guy who I correlated with, I related to when I watched him compete. I was like, oh, that's the same feistiness that I enjoy. That's how I like to play. We were a little different game styles. He's a bigger boy than me and whatnot, but the way he was into it and his fearlessness and relentless to go out and try to win, that was something that really inspired me. And he saw similar qualities in me as a recruit. And so I'd heard through the grapevine that he needed both at the time, an assistant and a volunteer assistant. So I shot him a call just kind of out of the blue. It was funny timing. Like I was like quitting my job, but I didn't have another job lined up. Like I'd done that process backwards. Still wasn't mature enough to know that. But nonetheless, so I quit my job on Friday. I called Clancy on Friday. He doesn't answer. I leave him a voicemail. He calls me back on Monday, now jobless. And he's like, hey, I just hired my assistant, but I would love to have you as a volunteer. Like, would you still be open to that? And as I just said, someone who I really looked up to as a player, for everything I knew about him, that was an easy yes. 2 weeks later, I'm in Tucson, Arizona in early August, and it's 120 degrees outside, and I'm questioning what I got myself into. It was all Clancy. Throughout that whole year, he's the one who really has been a huge mentor to me, someone I still look up to this day. I'm pretty confident when I say that he might be the best coach in college tennis. What he's done with that program from what they were when I was in school is nothing short of a miracle. And he's done that with just sheer passion and relentlessness, hard work, you name it. Any good quality you could say about someone is how I feel about Clancy Shields. And he's the one who really instilled kind of this fire in me to even speak up a little bit more and use my voice as a tool and express myself on court more. And he's such a class act, even though he's a crazy person too. And yeah, I love that guy to death. And if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be coaching still. But to this day, I still talk to him and he's a mentor to me. And yeah, I'm really, really pumped to have gotten to build that relationship with him. So if you're listening, Clancy, thank you. I owe you everything.
Yeah, he Colorado tennis icon. Him and his brother Luke inducted into the Colorado Tennis Hall of Fame for what they did as players. And one story that he shared that I'll never forget was, when he was at Utah State and they kind of were having, a little bit of success, and he was kind of riding the wave of that. And obviously a young coach, and the women's coach at the time ended up pulling him aside and be like, Clancy, what are you doing? Like, you're have all this potential as a coach and you're kind of doing like half of what you're capable of. And I just wanted to let you that because I care about you and I want to see how you can roll with it. And in that moment, man, the conviction that he had no idea that he was that comfortable, that full of himself. I mean, he had some very pointed words for that moment, but ultimately it was just a couple years later, he gets hired by Arizona as one of the youngest college coaching hires in the country, builds that program up. Another tremendous year this year, just came up short to Final Four. And obviously one of your Washington buddies there, Colton Smith, I gotta know some of the ins and outs of that real quick, because I know on my one hand how many Colorado tennis players have come out and have impacted the game nationally, the way like you and Colton have in Washington. What was it like to be one of the top recruits in the country and probably the top recruit from Washington State, to then have this guy, Colton Smith, come about and also be part of that narrative a few years later?
Yeah, it's an honor, and coming from Washington State, I feel like probably similar to how you felt coming out of the Intermountain region, right? Like we have a lot of limitations out here. It rains 10 months out of the year. It's not always ideal for tennis, but it felt really good. I could find a lot of pride in how I was able to get good. Kind of as I mentioned with my track story, I kind of went on a side quest to get to this level, and I think it just goes to show that there's so many different routes you can take. Whatever feels like home to you, and you can feel comfortable with your training regimen there. The sky's the limit. You can make the most out of any situation. So I'm very prideful to come from Washington State. I think Colton is too. I'm very close to Colton, actually. Right when I had graduated, I'm not going to say I was coaching him, but I helped him out a little bit. He was coming to a program where my junior coach was still coaching, and Colton would show up since he lives so far away. He would come like maybe once or twice a week, so I'd get to see him then, and I was seeing him progress. I was trying to help give him my perspective and whatnot, and to this day, I gotta tell you, Colton, if you're listening, I'm your number one fan, man. He's actually so nice that he's told me that he wants me to potentially travel with him a little bit this summer for the U.S. Open Series, and I'm hoping he holds true to that. That sounds really fun. I don't even care what my role is, right? I just being there
Be a groupie, man. Just be a groupie, right?
Exactly. No, I'll bring all the energy you need and be cheering for you. And no, I love the kid to death. I mean, Colton, like Clancy, class act, man. He's always so nice, so respectful, so down to earth, right? You can really just feel the realism pouring out of him. He's unapologetically himself, and that's something I look for in people, and I respect the hell out of it for Colton. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, because no doubt he's surpassed myself and my other good friend, Henrik Wiersholm, another Washingtonian who beat me in Kalamazoo. So, Henrik, if you're listening, then screw you. That was the one Kalamazoo. But nonetheless, I'm okay with Colton surpassing the level I achieved. He deserves it. He's phenomenal, and he's a hell of an athlete, hardest worker I know. He deserves everything that's coming to him right now, and I think he's just going to keep going. I don't even think he's reached his full level yet, which is insane. So looking forward to watching him in the main draw of Wimbledon once he gets through these next couple rounds.
Yeah, it's a pretty full circle moment to hear you say that, and to know that you were part of his development to where the relationship is strong enough to where you guys might be hanging out in his pro career. And I know that pro torch was right there for you as well. And it's tough. He's a good mentor of mine, Jeff Salzenstein, who's been on the podcast and got up to top 100 in the world and Stanford All-American, and played that match against Michael Chang, and had his moments, but then, the moment went away. And it's very challenging to play at the highest level. You spoke about what just happened at Wimbledon with Alcaraz and Sinner, and when I get down to Palm Springs and watch Indian Wells and just watch those guys grind, I'm like, man, the game is so physical now. I'd love for you to touch on some of the adversity you've had to face. I know that you were right there and arguably could have been right where Colton is now. And I'm not trying to rub salt in the wounds, but I think the listeners would really appreciate what is a tough day on the injury front for you that might have prevented some of your opportunities.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the respect you're putting on my game. Top 130 in the world is definitely difficult to achieve. I like to think I could have gotten pretty far, but Yeah, I was struck some bad luck. If I could keep going back to it, sorry, maybe the track stuff didn't help me at the end of the day. I just broke my body down. Yeah, going into my senior year at UW, we compete at the NCAA tournament. Throughout that whole year, I was dealing with some pretty severe hip pain. Like I was basically limited at practices to only 90 minutes, and I wasn't getting the most out of my experience with the hip injury that was prolonged. I wasn't in the doubles lineup because, like I said, I was only limited to 90 minutes. So I was only playing a singles match and practicing 90 minutes a day with limited weight sessions. And no, I wasn't seeing any improvement. Obviously, that's like some junior tennis kind of training right there. So I go see the doctor. I find out that I have hip impingement, where I guess basically my bones didn't fit right, and it was scraping on the labrum in there, and so my labrum was partially torn. So what they said they could do is they could go in, basically just rip the labrum off and then shave the bone down so that it fits better. And then you just place the labrum back on, and it takes 8 months to heal. So pretty tricky injury, especially for a tennis player. You're using your hips and the movement you use, like it was hurting every day. And once my adrenaline would wear off, I was wreathing in pain, to say the least, in tears basically. But nonetheless, I went the surgery route. I think to this day, I would say it was the best option. The recovery was completely brutal. I'm in a wheelchair or on crutches for a month and a half. After that, I'm at a snail's pace walk for another month and a half. I'm basically in the locker room with Matt Anger for 3 months straight in front of this gigantic full body mirror doing shadow swings for an hour a day, which was very helpful, but not very fun, I will
Oh,
say.
better than maybe 50 calls in the basement by yourself, right?
Yeah, it's true. Better. I didn't know that existed just yet, but nonetheless, Matt, being as detail oriented as he is, I'm like locked in on these shadow swings, and I'm like, Matt, I can't feel my leg, like it doesn't work. Coming back from the injury, once I was even able to get back on court, I was so far behind with fitness, especially with where I like my fitness to be, revamping and getting back into getting up to speed with the game, with my movement, with my endurance, my strength. Like I was so far behind just doing absolutely nothing for basically 4 months. And then even then, like I was still feeling my hip and things like that. I would say it wasn't for a good 7 or 8 months until I started to click back on again and find a little bit of a groove. And even from there, I would get worried. I feel it to this day. So I played really well that senior year once I built some confidence into my hip again. But when it came to going on tour, it was a really tricky situation and decision, I should say, for me. Right? It was like, okay, I'm from Seattle, Washington. If I want to go play 4 weeks in a row in Europe, that's going to cost me a couple grand at very minimum.
Yeah.
And if I happen to make a deep run into a tournament, like is my hip gonna hold up for the next week? Like or is that just gonna be a waste of money? So I was really in this in between where I was like, God, I'm playing some good ball, and like I really think I could make some noise out there and grinding and whatnot. But the reality of it for me was I didn't want to be tens of thousands of dollars in debt, and for a maybe. I wanted to be all in, and I didn't think I was going to be able to give it my best go. And tennis, especially at the low ranks of pro tennis, I feel like if you're not 1000% invested, it's just not worth it. It's so lonely out there. It's way different than college tennis. And then everyone out there is so freaking good too, right? Like freak athletes left and right. I wouldn't have been the only one running sub 430 miles, I don't think. So I look back in hindsight, and I regret not maybe trying a little bit harder, I must say. So that still kind of hits me a little bit, but I'm proud of what I was able to accomplish and the level I did achieve. And tournaments I still can play, I find really fun, and I find a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment in tennis still. But yeah, it definitely hits a little bit close to home knowing that I didn't give it like a good 6 months or even a year to go out and play and just see what I could do.
I appreciate you sharing that, because you can take that situation and channel it one of two ways. And I'm sure you've probably dabbled into both. One is you can have some regrets and kind of do the, oh, woe is me approach, or you can do what I believe has ignited your coaching journey is you've taken your perspective of what it takes to play at that level and maybe come across some players at the collegiate level that have the opportunity that you had and may have a hip that's just going to be a little bit nicer than yours was. Ultimately, your ability to channel that as a coach into these programs that you've worked with. We talked about U of A. I believe you went back to Washington for a little bit, found your way out here in Colorado at DU, and then also at Elon most recently before relocating back to Seattle. But as I say all of that, and you think of some players that you've come across, do you believe that the transition from college to pro, based off of how it's constructed now, the intensity that these guys are playing with, the level that these guys are playing with, is more possible than ever to make that jump?
1000%. I think if you're ranked in college tennis, you can go make a splash on the pro scene without a doubt. Like what the college game has become to me is absurd. The depth and the ability of all these guys, athleticism you see even at Elon, at Denver, and the altitude and hot, humid conditions in Seattle, indoor tennis. It's all over the place. And I really think the format of what college tennis presents, and when I say that, I mean a couple different things like the scoring, team aspect, the pressure that gets applied because of those things. And then just the training regimen, like Kollman, these guys are freaks, man. I'm telling you, like they're so ready to go. And I think we're seeing that these top college guys are like graduating, and like Jake Fernley's top 50. I feel like it was 6 months ago graduated, right? Like
Right.
they're ready. Like it's, and Colton Smith, he started the year ranked, I don't know, 500 even. And, they just zoom up there. So, if anyone's listening who's a potential recruit or anything, if you're unsure about going to college or not, I mean, it's the pathway. Like you're going to get the most out of it. And if you have the right mindsets with what you might receive and go about it, then there's no doubt it's going to prepare you well to play pro tennis. So 1000% it's going to prepare you.
Touch a little bit on the season with Coach Drew. 23-0, I believe it was, at Denver. I got to be honest, it's funny to talk about DU because being a University of Northern Colorado guy, when we transitioned to D1, DU became one of our big in-state rivals. At the time, they had a big Swedish pipeline, so I'm playing someone with blonde hair, blue eyes each time. They got up to top 50 in the country my junior year, found a way to beat them in 3 sets, one of the greatest wins of my life. But ultimately, it was amazing to see what you guys were able to do. I believe that 23-24 season, but just touch on what a perfect season meant to you. And then also the reality of, hey, once we hit NCAAs, there's another level where these Power Fives are bringing it. Would love to hear your perspective on that season, man.
Yeah, that's a memorable one. It's one for the books and likely one that might not be replicated for a really long time. Not just at DU, but maybe all over the country, right? I don't care who you're playing, but if you win 23 matches in a row, like that's a level of consistency that's just really hard.
Wake Forest even lost too, man. They tried to do a DU, but they couldn't do it. They only just lost one and won a national title.
Yeah, it's not easy. And that season, I would say, even just like besides the results, but very old team. We had brought in a couple transfers who were great players, but great people, very mature, in their 5th, or even we had one guy in case, Ashe, 6th year of college tennis. So very, very, how do I say, seasoned, experienced player when it comes to the team stuff. And, apart from that, the other just like incoming freshman recruits, Nico, Charlie Miller, that's Nico Herrera Cuesta. We brought in Daniel Sancho Arbizu, who just this past year in his senior year had unbelievable season. Really the stars align. Like the culmination of having these old guys and on the team with all this experience. To me, the best part was just seeing how that they had matured enough to handle those expectations, right? Like obviously getting to 10-0 is one thing, but then every match after that, you're just kind of on your mind a little bit. And the way that they just kind of went out and were able to be relentless with their approach at practice. I will say Drew had a big impact on that. He especially coming from the Ohio State system, Drew's very good at making sure the standard and the expectation is clearly, I should say, I'm going to emphasize clearly met or clearly known from player and staff member alike. And I'd also say just the combination of Drew, Will Davies, and myself as a staff, we all had guys that we felt like we could really connect and touch with, and it really all came together in this spectacular season. And I would say sometimes there's a little luck involved. That might have been the case, but we had a team of 6 leaders. It doesn't happen too often. Each one of those guys could have been named captain. We probably should have just had 8 co-captains and called it a day. But yeah, credit to the guys. They're the ones who put in the hard work. Drew, Will, and myself we were just supervising and kind of trying to throw in some perspective where we could, and a little bit of technique, a little bit of strategy here and there. And next thing, 23-0 with a conference championship under our belt. And I'll tell you, that Michigan State match too at Harvard, it was 4-0, but we're damn close, dude.
Yeah.
We had some looks in the doubles. Panchi, that's Daniel Sancho. I don't know. He told us to call him Panchi. I don't know why. That was his name. And, he's up 3-0 in the third. Nico's up a set on Ozan Barris. Marvin, I think, was up 5 in both sets. So that team, we were used to winning. So whenever we went out for a match, there was a lot of confidence. And it seemed just as the season went on, it kept growing. I got that one written in a journal somewhere. Hopefully, when I'm getting senile, I can go back and reread that one.
You actually just laid out the antidote that a lot of college tennis programs are doing right now to play at the highest level is a lot of grad transfers. I believe Wake Forest team was pretty seniored as well. And I remember watching the televised coverage of that when they were playing TCU in the final. And they had this chart of basically all the guys on the roster and how many of them actually started playing tennis there or where they came from. And almost every roster, like, it was just moving and shaking. And that just shows you my story of the walk-on and being able to shake things up in a lineup without having the junior pedigree or some of the tour level points these guys have that they can bring into a potential college setting. Ultimately, I know we touched on the recruiting process and how challenging it is to play D1 in 2025. The way that you coach, and as you've transitioned now to a academy coach, I know you talked about the tangibles of working hard and moving your feet, but man, like, to play against grown men when you're a freshman or sophomore, what do you do, Mitch?
I wish there was like a secret potion or something that could really answer that question. But look, I've recently been trying to expand, my tennis knowledge a little bit. I love watching tennis. I watch YouTube and you name it, right? If it's tennis related, I'll probably watch it, especially if it's highlights or full matches, whatever it might be. And something I've really come to notice is just we're all different players. No one plays 2 games alike. You might relate more to someone like Ferrer. For me, was someone who I quite related to, and really what we're all trying to do out there is be relentless in what our own identity is. And how you go about that, it's not so much what your weapons actually are that is effective, but the length of time that you can sustain them is what really makes them a problem. And I will say I did steal that a little bit from Carousel. I watched a video of his when he was talking about like tennis identity, and it's a great video. I don't have the link to it on me right now, but I thought he had an amazing definition, and it was very clear, and I was able to understand it very clearly what like an identity is as a tennis player. So nonetheless, focusing not so much on what your opponent is doing, but what you do to make your opponent uncomfortable, and then practicing to sustain that for, like I said, at the very peak, 5.5 hours is a good length of time to do it, obviously. But if it's 2 hours or an hour and a half, that's just what you're trying to expand is your endurance with what you do really, really, really well. I will say, sure, you sprinkle in some strategical other points like your positioning with a return or where you don't just beat a dead horse over and over again. If it's not working, you got to make some tactical adjustments here and there. But I would say if you feel like you have a strong identity and you can combine certain weapons in your game, I would just hammer those home and refine some weaknesses and see how long you can sustain that. Like go out and play a practice match and just for the fun of it, make it 3 out of 5 sets. See how long you can go, because that length of time is really where the problems can arise and for your opponents.
Mitch, I got two more for you. The first one that comes to mind is I love the underdog story. I love these moments where people do things that no one thinks they can do it and they find a way to overcome and achieve. So as a coach, from your perspective, whether it's what you've seen in college or around some of the juniors that you've been able to coach, share a quick story about an individual that comes to mind that just really surprised you on what they were able to do, not just on the tennis courts, but to overcome the odds.
I'll go to one of my favorite students I ever had. And you know, this guy really maximized everything he had in tennis, but he also maximized his life, the way he was able to build relationships, and it's just someone I love to be around whenever I can, get him on the phone whenever I can. Charlie Miller, I mentioned him previously in that Denver season. He was one of the seniors, true seniors on the team, and he was a 4-year guy. Man, I don't know if Drew actually wants me to share this, but we were pretty close. In that first year I was with Drew, it was Charlie's sophomore year. He'd had a rough freshman year, I believe. I think he was maybe in and out of the lineup a little bit and wasn't performing to maybe the standard they expected from his recruitment. He struggled through the fall with that first year as me, as the coach on the assistant side. Basically in November, I didn't know Drew was going to do this. I was just on a video call like this with you, and Drew's like giving it to him pretty good about something. And, you know, it basically ended with like, you know, you kind of better get your shit together. Otherwise, like, we might need to find a new home for you kind of thing. And huge credit to Charlie Miller, without mentioning, like, greatest kid in the world, like listens really well, really locked in, trying his hardest at all times. It just wasn't clicking for him just yet. And, you know, he came back in January and he just looked like a new man. Like he got an opportunity to play in the lineup at 6 and he seized it right away. He just was playing so hard that extra fight kicked in, and the more matches he got under his belt, he got more and more comfortable. And, you know, he was a leader with his voice, with his effort, with his attitude. He was just fun to have in the car rides. Everyone loved him. Tennis, soccer, you name it, whoever it was. Charlie Miller is like the man on Denver campus. Me and him got really close. I think I'd like to say he has a lot of respect for me. I feel like I heard Drew say what he said, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna make sure I dive into this kid. I'm not gonna let him go down in flames like that either. So I really poured into him and gave him all the knowledge I had, all the effort I had. I was giving him a whooping in some baseline games. Like, he had a similar game style to me, but I was a little more older and experienced. And yeah, you know, by the end of his career, he was one of the captains without question. No one argued that. He led the team, not so much with his level day in and day out, but just like I said, he did everything right. And to this day, I'm really proud to call him not just a student, but a friend. And yeah, he's in law school right now, and I think he's finishing it up back home in Scotland. And he's going to be a lawyer, so he'll be getting me out of jail here one day, probably for something crazy I do. And I'm glad I can call him. So I'm really happy for him.
Well, we certainly have to keep you out of trouble, Mitch. And with that said, you've seen a lot. You've experienced tennis at a very high level, both as a player and a coach. Sounds like you have a tremendous upbringing, a supportive family, tough brotherly love, but sometimes necessary for us younger brothers to develop some resiliency and figure out how to fight. But ultimately, you know, here you are back in the state of Washington, giving back to a community that I know means a lot to you. But if you have to reflect back, Mitch, and knowing what you know now, when this is all said and done, and I don't know if you've been inducted into a Washington Tennis Hall of Fame, if they even have one, but how do you want your community to remember Mitch Stewart not just you as the player, but who you are as the person and the coach?
Yeah, it's funny. This is a great question. Something I feel like I'm still like trying to work on, is just constantly being genuine and giving my honest opinion about things, even if it's maybe something that someone doesn't want to hear, right? Like as a coach, you could really take the easy way and just tell a kid he's doing great and pat him on the back, even if, he's maybe doing something poorly or wrong. What I've really come to find is if I'm really true to myself and go about my business respectfully always, but nonetheless just the honesty that I can give back based on my perspective, right? Everyone has different truths, and I believe that, but I've really come to find that people really respect that, and it really builds an honest relationship. And that's really kind of what I'm looking for is I want to build relationships with people within the tennis community. And even if I can help them or cannot help them, I still want to know your story, and I'll try my damnedest, to help. But nonetheless, as I keep going through this system, meeting new kids or collegiate players, adults even that I coach, I just think being real with them, being honest about what I see, even if it potentially can hurt their feelings at times, I think that's just the best way to go, telling the honest truth, how it is. Um, I'd say other lessons I'd learned is just communication is key. In my experience personally, arguing is never a good process of learning. I always try to say, instead of arguing, we should just, I think, and that's okay if we disagree, right? Like that's nothing wrong with that at all. And if we end up not seeing eye to eye, it doesn't mean we can't be friends. Like it's just how it is. We have different perspective. We come from different backgrounds, like you said. So that's kind of how I like to go about my business, is just tell how I see it. And actually, funny enough, a friend I was speaking to just the other day, I was telling him I was going on this podcast, and they had like a really interesting quote, how they build relationships. And they said something along the lines of, no one's all good or all bad. We're a mixed parts of this bag. And I thought that was a really good outlook, right? Whether you agree or disagree with someone, we can at least respect the fact that there's good in everybody, and there's things I do poorly as well, right? Like no one's perfect, and we all need to be able to see that to come together and reach the common goal of living our lives to the fullest and making sure everyone's getting what they want out of this and being happy. It's not always easy for everybody. I definitely find a ton of fulfillment in the sport that I play and coach, and I hope I can do it for a long time.
Well, Mitch, from getting to know you and what I know of you, you're a heck of a coach, man, a heck of a player. I am excited to see what the future brings, not just at the academy level, but who knows, man? He might be helping out some guys on the tour and coaching at the highest level. I believe you have a tremendous skill set. You got a tremendous story. One of the highest recruits out of Washington, out of the nation. Washington Husky, unbelievable coaching career. Keep up the good work, man. Impossible's nothing. And I appreciate you joining me today on the BTB Project.
Thank you so much for having me, Kollman. This was a blast, and would love to speak to you again down the road if any new stories come up. But I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think your mission is incredible, and I think people can learn a lot from you and all the guests that you have on. So this has been really fun, and I can't thank you enough.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Kollman.
What a fantastic conversation with Mitch Stewart. Extraordinary career he had at Washington, 4-time All Pac-12, and to then go on and do what he's done as a coach, how it's translated to where he can still compete, he can still go out and hit with the best of these college guys years younger than him. That's instant respect for those players and the programs that he's been able to help. And I was just inspired by the tenacity that he approaches life with. Mitch, although had an extensive track background, being able to take that type of mindset into his tennis training, into how he constructs points, into that grinder's mentality was a huge takeaway for me. And for you as the listener, the reflection of being able to be remembered as someone that spoke the honest truth, that helped people, but also was respectfully letting them know what it was going to take to accomplish their goal. we certainly need more coaches like that in today's day and age. And I know with what Mitch has lined up with the academy in Seattle to opportunities helping pros on the tour, he's going to continue to impact lives, and just an extraordinary story that he has. But listen, if Mitch's story impacted you, do me a favor and like and subscribe to the BTB Project. Better yet, send this message to a family member, friend, or colleague, and give them some tidbits about Mitch that you think can help them. It's this BTB community. It's us coming together and taking these extraordinary stories and applying them into our own Built to Be journey. As always, I'm proud of each and every one of you. And until next time, take care.